We are pleased to welcome Dela, strategic advisor and engagement architect at Ask Dela. Over the past 2 decades, Dela has built a reputation of challenging conventional wisdom in email marketing space.
What's the minimum number of emails that you send? No one is sitting down and saying, what's the minimum? What's the minimum expectation? What did someone sign up for, right? And mostly, human beings know when you sign up for an email, they pretty much know what to expect. They expect that you're going to mail. Why is this important? It's because when people talk about maximum emails, they say, how many emails do we send a week? And the answer could be like 10 different emails a week. And they go, oh my God, we're sending 2 emails. But they don't say who got those 10 emails. But here's the funny thing. The biggest section of the list, the unengaged people, got 0. I personally think that nobody that you have collected an email address for legitimately, that is, they opted in to join your list, should get less than 1 email a week. There's no reason to stop mailing them unless they unsubscribe.
On today's email Q&A, we have Dela Quist. We are pleased to welcome Dela, strategic advisor and engagement architect at Ask Dela. He is widely respected thought leader in the email marketing domain and digital strategy space. Over the past 2 decades, Dela has built a reputation of challenging conventional wisdom in email marketing space. He is well known for questioning long-held assumptions such as belief that sending fewer emails is always better than open rates are the most reliable way to measure success, and many other. If you ever hesitated about increasing your send frequency or struggled to quantify true value of email in your marketing mix, Dela brings a fresh perspective. His frameworks includes widely recognized monthly active subscribers metric, offer practical alternatives that drives growth and measurable impact. So in today's session, along with Dela, we'll have a quick walkthrough of strategies for increasing send volumes responsibly, winning back disengaged subscribers, which is a major concern for majority of the brands, and also demonstrating the value of email in a world where privacy regulations are reshaping the market. I encourage you to stay with us, because once you hear Dela explain the hidden cost of suppressing inactive subscribers, it may shift the way you think about your email list and long-term revenue impact. So welcome, Dela.
Thank you very much. Very kind words.
Good. So today on our email mastery session to drive revenue and growth and around the engagement, right? The first thing which we would love to start with is the email frequency mindset, right? So email frequency is always a concern for any of the marketing people, right? They always have concern, the brand marketers, email marketers, what should be the email frequency they should focus on. You being working as a marketer, right? Lots of marketers are getting anxious about sending too many emails, right? They are worried about subscribers will unsubscribe, they will get churn, label them as spam. But you repeatedly argued that sending more emails can actually boost sales, right? And not hurt your brand. You talked extensively on about setting a flow for email frequency. So we'd love to understand what's the minimum send frequency every brand should aim for and why.
It's very interesting that you start a question about what's the minimum number of emails that you send with a caveat that everybody's worried about sending too many. That's the problem right there. No one is sitting down and saying, what's the minimum? What's the minimum expectation? What did someone sign up for, right? And mostly, human beings know when you sign up for an email, they pretty much know what to expect. They expect that you're going to mail. I'm pretty sure in today's day, no one signing up for a list thinks that you'll not mail them for 3 months and then mail them every once in a while or the holiday season and then mail them at a different time. No, they sign up because it's like when you subscribe to a newspaper, right? They don't just decide, oh, you haven't read the newspaper for 4 days, so I'm going to cancel your subscription. No, they don't. They continue to send it. So the point I'm trying to make is that you have to understand what the minimum is, okay? And this minimum is for everybody on the list. Why is this important? It's because when people talk about maximum emails, they say, how many emails do we send a week? And the answer could be like 10 different emails a week. right? And they go, oh my God, we're sending 2 emails, but they don't say who got those 10 emails, right? Only the CEO and the CMO and the tech people got all of them because they were testing, right? Everybody else got a proportion of them. But here's the funny thing. The biggest section of the list, the unengaged people, got 0, right? So we're taking the biggest number, extrapolating across the whole list and saying you're mailing too much, so you double down on your instinct to suppress the people who don't owe respect. That's not the case. And one of the things I have to be careful about, because I know you have a lot of questions, is not to try and answer them all in one go, because it gets confusing. So we go back to what's the minimum number of sending. I personally think that nobody that you have collected an email address for legitimately, that is, they opted in to join your list, should get less than 1 email a week. Nobody. There's no reason to stop mailing them unless they unsubscribe. Now, why is that important? Because of all the channels, there's only one channel that you can say no to a particular brand or any advertising, and that's email, right? You can't get on TV. You can't drive down the street and say, oh, I don't want a Chick-fil-A ad because I don't agree with their values, or I don't agree with McDonald's because I don't agree with their values, and so I want those suppressed. You can't. You just have to suck them up, right? Here's the difference. The difference is you only get things in your inbox that you asked to get. The billboard and TV, you never ask. So the people who never ask don't care. And the people who do ask bend over backwards to be silly. And that's the point. So I say everybody on your list should get at least 1 email a week. Now, why is that important? We all know that every time you send someone who hasn't opened a list of people who haven't opened for a year, some will open, right? What happens when they open? They generate behavior. What do we do with behavior? We activate triggers. So all our CRM kicks in because we engage them. And this cannot happen if you didn't send them an email. Okay? So when they open or they visit your website, you can have an abandoned cart, or you can have a welcome back, or you can have any kind of trigger that you like based on that. And then they go and look at your website, then you say abandoned site, then you send them an offer, then they click on the offer, then you send them an abandoned cart, then they buy, and then you go, oh my God, my automations work perfectly, right? But if you hadn't sent to the inactive, do you know how that person would have gone on the list? Paid media. And that's just stupid. That's my view, right? So you have someone on the list that costs you less than $1 a year. It's probably about, for some people it'd be 10 cents, for some people it'd be 90 cents. But it's less than $1 a year to mail someone on your list 3 times a week for a whole year. Costs you less than $1. Why would you not mail them? And the only answer is deliverability. Now tell me that 1 email a week is going to make Gmail or anybody so angry with you they're going to stop blocking you. That's not going to happen, right? Assuming you don't do anything stupid. I'm assuming you follow best practice with deliverability and you continue to do so, and you don't start with a problem, okay? So I'm assuming you start with no deliverability problems. You just want to start mailing. Everybody on your list should get 1 a week. Now, why would Gmail say that's a bad idea? Now contrast this. For whatever reason, cost, because a lot of the ESPs and mail providers are now saying, ESPs and platform providers are now saying, oh, pay for, you have to pay for engaged users. Do you see what I mean? So you say, oh, why would I pay for unengaged users? So you take them off the list and you stop mailing. Then the holiday season comes, or the business comes to you and says, hey, guess what? We need more money, and I don't care how you feel about deliverability. You're going to mail the whole list. So you take this list out that you haven't mailed for 6 months and suddenly start mailing them. Which do you think is going to cause you more deliverability problems? Mailing every week, once a week on the same day, or not mailing them for 3 months and then saying, hey, we miss you, or it's the holiday season. And so the point about it is deliverability advice is completely contradictory, right? It's common sense if someone subscribes to you to at least mail them once a month. Anything less than that is a ridiculous number. Now, I'm going to throw in something really interesting in this, is that I believe that 1 email that goes to everybody, right, once a week, or there's 1 email that goes to everybody once a week, okay, and the minimum is around engaged people, right, once a week. I believe that email should be the same for everybody with no personalization in the same subject line. And the reason for that is it becomes your test base. You can calibrate everything over that, right? So when you start segmenting, right, and you go, oh, my engaged users jumped 10%, right? And you'll go, oh, that's the best subject line because that's it. When you look at the whole list, you'll see that same subject line, do you get what I mean? Unengaged users actually responded much better in numbers. So the rate was high for the engaged, but 2 times 100,000 is bigger than 5 times 100. Okay, 5% of 100. So that's basically how it works. But you start by saying everybody on my list must get one. And how do you know that not everyone on your list is getting one email? Just do something simple. In a single month, right, divide the total number of emails you sent in a single month by your mailable list. Full mailable list. And if you can't do mailable list, find the biggest list you did in the last 12 months, and it's probably your holiday season. Do you get what I mean? And then divide it. And guess what? In almost every situation, the average number of emails a subscriber gets in a month is less than one. And that tells me you're not mailing 50% of your list in any given month. And that's a problem for me. Because what you're then doing is the month that you don't mail those people, or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, you're paying to get them on acquisition. And then you sit down and call your SEO team and your acquisition team in, give them a pat on the back, and pay Meta and ABC millions of dollars, right, to sell you your own customers. It's madness. Anyway, there you go. There's a nice warm-up question for you.
No, I definitely align that you need to set up a minimum flow, right? At least one email for everyone in your list every week is a mandate. But then I also have some rationale here, right? Where there are brands who are not still segmenting. What they do is blast every email to everyone, right? They don't have that ideation of how to categorize the audience based on their choices, based on their first data, right? Zero data, what they've submitted. And they try to always do that batch and blast, right? Which was working earlier. It might be working still for many of the brands. But they tend to follow that batch and blast process where they send every campaign to everyone, right? Without...
Okay. I'm going to stop you. Just the word batch and blast. It's so prejudiced, right? Yep. There you go. You're just prejudicing the whole debate straight away and saying it's a stupid idea, right? Without actually knowing the true answer or having examined it recently to see if that idea still holds true. So my view is it's never held true. So let's start with it. Let's move away. Let's use our common sense. Are you an email marketer who cares about nothing else, or are you a marketer who sends email and therefore cares about everything? And if you're an email marketer who cares about nothing else, then you may as well put this down and stop listening to me. But there are 10 times more people who send email who are just marketers, right? Than there are email marketers who only do email marketing and care about the profession as if they are, there's some sort of trade union around it, right? That's not the case. It's just all of us doing our job. So, to go to your question about batch and blast, I've just advocated sending one email to everyone, the same email with the same subject line. I'm just saying batch and blast at least once a week. That's a good idea. Do you know what the alternative? The alternative is huge segmentation, and you do nothing to 50% of your list, and you spend your whole life trying to optimize less than 25% of your total subscriber, the people who you could engage, because you have this idea that they prefer you to pay for them in another channel. Okay? So straight away, you are going straight back to what email marketers do. They avoid common sense, they stop counting and start looking for percentages and rates and everything else. And if you want 100% open rate, just send an email to your mother. Just one. That's it. You'll have 100% open rate all the time. But you know something? Anything else, you're going to get 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever the number is, I don't really care. And I'll tell you this. If you send to your best subscribers, your open rate or click rate will be 5 times higher than if you sent to everybody across the board. But the point is, everybody that you wouldn't have sent an email to, the unengaged people who you didn't email, that is incremental. It's not a rate. Okay? So yes, if you send to everyone, your open rate falls, but that's because you can't count. If you counted, you'd have seen your opens increase by 40%, your clicks increased by 70%. Do you get what I mean? And your open rate decreased by 15% and your click rate decreased by 40%. Who cares? Who cares? And so the point about segmentation and targeting is this. The funnel is so, okay? And the funnel can be like this, or the funnel can be like this. And you can optimize anywhere on that path, okay? From here down to there. What you're saying is before you do anything up here, just start making sure the bucket isn't leaky, right? Now, where are you going to get the funds from that? Because you haven't got any money. because you're focusing on only people who would have bought anyway. Okay, you're not growing your list. Your acquisition costs are higher than they should be, right? All of these things are happening, and you're going, oh, but the firewall is leaking. Now I'm going, turn on the fire modes, right? Double the volume going in, leave the holes the same size. Do you get what I mean? And you're doubling the output, right? Treble the output, and the same thing's happening. So if you want to start focusing on the bottom, it's after you're doing the minimum, which is mailing everybody on the list once a week, right? If you want to make that the most highly segmented, fantastic email you've ever done in your life, great. But how do you segment, and how do you build a persona around someone who has engaged with you for 2 years? How do you do that? Right? So what you then do, persona is, oh, these are my best customers. These VIPs do this. Then you'll go and say, this is the subject line the VIPs like. That's 5% of your list. You then go and apply the VIP subject line to 65% of your list or 45% of your list who haven't engaged with you for a while, and you think you're clever. That's my problem. My problem is the basics. Now, let's go back to TV advertising, right? Imagine if that mindset existed in TV, right? And I said to you, I'm going to offer you TV advertising at a cost of $1 per 1,000 viewers, right? At which point will you start going, maybe my commercials are on TV too much? The answer is never. Okay? What would you start doing? You start saying, oh, my commercials are in TV all the time. Okay? So I have to make it more interesting. And if you watch any brand that uses predominantly advertising as their marketing thing, right? Their commercials change over time. They reflect things. So if you were to look at a 25-year-old commercial for Citibank, right, and then compare it to now, or look at the Citibank commercials as they've evolved over the years, you're going to see how much millions of dollars they spent on it, right? And they spent on it, but they don't go around and say, oh, do you know something? Oh, I don't think it's a good idea because this is a man and he won't buy feminine products, right? Feminine hygiene products. Now, this is why that's stupid. I have 3 daughters, okay? And a wife. My household, they've mostly left home now. I'm old enough for them to be peacefully at home with my wife. But during their growing up times, right, I'd be out or something. And, my wife and my daughters might would say something like, oh, can you buy me some feminine hygiene products or even some makeup or something like that, right? Because I've run out and I'm going out. So you've got to go to the store. Now tell me I'd go into the store and buy a brand that I hadn't heard of. I just wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. If I couldn't remember what they told me, I'd go, oh, blah, blah, blah. Or even if it's because I see it in our bathroom, it's the brand trigger in the box that recognizes and makes me go and buy it, right? That's how branding works. It's about reach and frequency. And until email marketers realize that they have the cheapest channel, the most effective channel that has ever existed to marketers or humankind, right? Then what can I say? Go spend your money on TV. Go spend your money on Google. Don't optimize email. Send only to your most engaged customers. Every time someone doesn't open for 2 years, go and pay for them again on Google. Make my day.
Totally agree on that, but no, that's a valid and fair point.
But do you see how the prejudice just comes in? In every question I get, there's going to be a bias that actually this is a bad idea. And I'm just used to it. And what I do is I just jump on it really quickly because I just want to show everybody, listen, you know something? This isn't a new idea. I've actually written an article today in my newsletter, The Frequency File, that I would recommend anybody follow or subscribe to, whatever it is. It's on LinkedIn, okay? But today's article was really simple. Deliverability advice hasn't changed for 15 years. It's the same. I put a little chart there I went and did a search, found best practice deliverability advice from all the deliverability providers in 2015, 2020, and 2015. I put them side by side. It's the same advice. And the headline for the promotion for the article is your email still in the spam box? Too bad. Because the advice hasn't changed for 15 years. So you're doing the same thing, right? Not willfully. But this is what the industry does. I'm coming here and saying the advice hasn't changed for 15 years and you're still saying what's best advice. I'm offering you something different and you go, oh, no, I'm going to stick with what isn't working and why I'm here listening to you.
Yep. So your points and rational you're sharing is definitely valid. It's just that people are having a specific thinking of, and they normally try to just be something unique, right? They don't try to follow the ideal world scenarios, right? Which is about making sure that you reach out to each and every subscribers of your inbox rather than just segmenting, and then just following and reaching out to only 15 or 20% of your total database, right? That's the challenging thing. Moving forward,
Actually, can I add one thing? Can I just add one thing to that? This is a really important thing. Let's take two brands, okay? They do exactly the same thing. They've got exactly the same list. They send the same number of emails to everybody. Everything is the same. So everything is equal for those two brands, brand A and brand B. Okay? So, brand A just stops mailing. They have their inactive list. They don't mail them. They do what everyone else does. Whether that's 40% of the list or 60% of the list, I don't even care. Even if it's 30, 70, doesn't really matter, right? It's a big number. It's their biggest segment, okay? Now, I'm a bad actor working for it. So I go in and I steal that list of the people that they've stopped mailing. And I go to their competitor and say, hey, guess what? I've got a list of all the people they don't even want to mail anymore. What would you do? How much would you pay for the list? Assuming you were of a bad mind and didn't care about the law or something like that, right? You'd bite their hand off. You would pay almost anything for it. And the funny thing is the reverse is true for the other brand. So the stupid thing about this is that your brand values the other customers' inactives more than you value, and vice versa, right? And that's the final part of how silly the debate is from my perspective. Because if I put it in that way, you would want those people immediately.
Yep. Any competitor would buy it for sure, right? Even though whatever you ask, right, they would be happy to pay.
In a second.
Yeah. They're getting a ready-made set of interested prospects and customers, right, which they would be willing to pay for.
And you think they are completely useless.
Yep.
How's that possible? No, they're not useless. If they come back to you via social media, that's the success of your social media team, who you spend 10 times more budget on, right, in your search team than you do on your email team. So even if the attribution went to email, the temptation will be to attribute it to something where you spend more money.
Yep. Totally aligned. So yeah, that's a good point from you, Dela, that it's about reaching out to each and every subscribers, and you should not miss out. No matter what, even though whether they are unengaged or not, make sure that you at least reach out to them at least once in a week. That's the bare minimum, right? But yeah, that brings me to the next question, which is about, let's say there is a brand which you talked about, right? And let's take an example, right? And if they're currently sending 2 emails per week to their engaged audience, right? To it, what's your go-to process for ramping up the frequency, right? And you mentioned about, okay, the minimum is, let's say, once a week, right?
Yeah.
Now they're already doing it 2 per week, right? For all their database, right? Or all the users, right? Rather than just sending it to the engaged users. What would be your go-to process, right? Where they can ramp up the frequency safely and expand that reach, right? Without triggering any internal pushback or list fatigue.
So let's say you start with 1 email a week, right?
Yep.
Now, there's a couple of things. First of all, is there's no limit to the number of emails that someone whose behavior generates an automation. And automations are your biggest friend. And once you send everyone the same email, presenting starting from the beginning, right? I would say everyone gets the same email, then build every automation off of that, right? So if you're already sending, make sure everyone gets the same email, and just make sure you have every automation that's available to you, okay? The automations that particularly matter are the automations that are behaviorally driven, but with an added temporal or time perspective, because human beings tend to do things regularly, right? So the first time they buy from you, they're very highly likely to buy again, right? So you have to have a whole load of triggers and activity around when they first come on, okay? Because you're most likely to get a second or indeed a third purchase from anybody in the first weeks or days after they make the first purchase. It's in everybody's data, okay? So what you do is when someone makes the first purchase and they come on the list for the first time, or first purchases, they've been on the list or whatever it is, you automatically put them into an automation flow, right? That could be your post-purchase or whatever it is, blah, 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 all of those sorts of things. Then the second thing that happens is they tend to buy at about the same time on a regular basis, right? So if your purchase is every 3 months or so, they'll buy regularly. If it's a holiday or something they'll pretty much buy at the same time every year. Even gifts, do you see what I mean? Because they buy gifts for people. Why do you buy someone a gift? An anniversary. So it's just bizarre. And these are one of the easiest automations to set up. So the next thing you do is you set up an automation from days, weeks, figure it out, do a test from last open or last click. Yeah, you do it days, weeks from last purchase, right? Anniversaries of this. You make sure that in the run up to 1 year or whatever it is, or 3 months, you send a few more and you put them in a program, okay? Then every time they go to the website and they abandon the site without doing anything, do you see what I mean? You send them an email. It's an automation. You also learn, what did they look at? What did they drop off on the website? You sent them there, right? So you just start building all the automations off that, abandoned cart, this, that, and the other. So in theory, in 1 week, a very active user could get 20 emails. Who cares? That's the right thing. They asked for every one of them. Okay, here's the second thing. All the people who didn't email would not have generated any activity that you'd have attributed to email, and so therefore they wouldn't have made the trigger work, right? Because you saw no behavior. So that's what you do. So one email to everyone, then you build every trigger and automation you can think of. Do everything you can think of, okay, around that. Test cadence. Say, does 3 welcome better than 1? Or is abandoned cart better after 1 hour or 2 hours? Is it 2 abandoned cart or 3 abandoned carts? Coupon, no coupon. Do all the testing you like. Make my day. But you're testing, what, 50 people a day, 100 people a day, 5 people a day? Doesn't matter. They're high value, right? So you do all of that. So what do you do next? So now you've got 1 email a week. Can I send 2? Absolutely. Assuming all those other triggers things are there, absolutely. So the question is it worth my while just sending the same email to everyone, or should I now start segmenting? Oh, I'll test it. Do you know how I can test it? Because I've got a benchmark that I don't change. So when I segment it, I'll be able to tell whether segmenting works or doesn't work, right? I am not vested in the result, so therefore fake the data to make it look good because I don't have a control. I have a control, and that control is always there. I can prove it to anybody, right? So now you've got 2. The second one is segmented or not. It doesn't really matter. So now you're doing it. And then you say, oh, now all my triggers are there. Let me update them. Shall I do a different creative for the holiday season? Shall I do this? Shall I do that? Oh, last year's look is a bit dated. Fashion is different. This year's color is purple. Last year's color was yellow. I need to change my email. So you do all of that stuff, right? So now you've got 2 emails a week and you've got all this brilliant stuff going on. Some people are getting 15 emails, but they deserve it. No one's getting less than 2, right? So now you go to 3 emails a week. Same process. It's not very hard. And at no stage did I do anything crazy. Now, what most people say when I say send more email, they say, well, if you took your whole list of people you had mailed for 3 years and then send them 20 emails in 5 minutes, that would be a stupid idea. I go, but I never said that. I never said that. It's called hashtag DBS. When I started, I used to call it hashtag don't be stupid, right? Don't be stupid means if I tell you there's a fire, leave the building. Don't tell me you can't because it's 10 stories up when the stairs are there, right? That's just stupid. I now say do be smart because people don't like being called not stupid. So just be smart about it, right? If you haven't mailed your list for a while, take advice. Don't just do anything silly. Listen to what I said, which is your goal is to get everyone to get an email every week. Your goal is to set up a test benchmark. Your goal is to make every automation perfect. Now, which bit of that doesn't sound like perfect best practice? And yet I'm called the guy who just says send more email.
No, definitely. It's about just making sure that once you have the flow set, that's a 1 email per week for everyone. Try to have those triggered automations, right, which can help you to learn and evolve, right? And then
everyone you can think of, and then ask ChatGPT what you haven't thought of. and then ask ChatGPT what they didn't think about and set up all those automations. You can automate all you like because you've set up the top part of the funnel. It's steady and delivering.
Yeah.
Now you can focus on the bottom. Now you can say, oh, does a round call to action work better than a hexagonal one? Now it matters.
Yep. Once you have the automation, it's all about making sure that you do that testing and experimentation, right? Which helps you to learn and set up new cases.
Yes. But the reason I don't start with the automation piece is because that's where everyone is and they refuse to leave it.
Yep.
So if I came here and I said, oh yeah, what you need to do is set up every automation, people say, oh, that Dela Quist guy, he's so intelligent, he knows email inside out. Let me follow him, right? And all I do is say, no, do that after.
Yeah. Start with your campaign first and then set up your triggered automation.
Yes, and learn from your campaign. It's a bit like TV. If you never put your commercial on the TV until it was perfect, you're just wasting time and money.
Yep. You're just twisting the efforts.
You know, that's the sort of thing that people do when they only use focus groups. Yeah. Politicians who only use focus groups usually fail, for example. I suspect marketers too. That's not to say focus groups don't help.
Okay.
That's not what I'm saying. But they have to be in the context of actually real. So if your focus group says A and your audience says B, then you better shift.
Yep. It's better to change your focus.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing on focus groups. Net Promoter Score. Here's another thing no one ever does. No one has ever done a before and after Net Promoter Score after 1 email a week versus 3 or 2, right? Because I'll tell you what, from a commercials perspective, TV, radio, press, everything, okay? If someone saw your commercial 10 times, your Net Promoter Score will be higher than if they saw it once. And the same is true of email. So if you really had to persuade the powers that be that one more email a week to everybody wasn't a bad idea, run a test group and do a Net Promoter Score before and afterwards. And if you really have the capability, go and see what happens in terms of customer support calls. Was it higher or lower in which group?
Yep. So NPS will give you a clean and transparent view, right?
Yeah.
That is using. And there are high possibilities that your Net Promoter Score would increase, right? When they see brands into the inbox on a regular basis.
And it's also the reason why no one's ever brought data that proves me wrong. Think about it. The whole industry has thought I was wrong for 20 years, right? Has anyone been able to just prove it? No. Have I been able to prove what I'm saying is right? Every day.
Yep. It's a good thought which marketers should focus on, right? And it's already tested, right? People have already tested. They are trying it. It's just that people are still not open to accept that easily. And they always have their own set of mind, like focusing at just the best practices. But yeah, moving forward, right, when we talk about frequency, right, when we know that we start with one, reaching out to everyone in the inbox, right, without fail, then scaling it up with triggered automations and learning from it. The next thing which comes into the picture, it's more around how to think beyond the legacy metrics, right, the performance metrics. Now, if I talk about a specific area, right, marketers everywhere, right, struggle with unreliable open rate metrics, right, because there are bots, there are certain updates with email clients, right, which are inflating the open rates, and it's always difficult to identify what an actual open rates are, right. There are privacy changes, like you have been working on, and you are champion on impression-based metrics, right, which you term it as, to measure emails' true impact. You call it the monthly active subscribers. I've also heard you referencing it as a fitness score of the account, right? But practically speaking, how do you get senior marketers to shift from the traditional way of measuring the clicks and opens, right, to monthly active subscribers, right, which is something more towards predicting the revenue? And what does that transformation look like in our real life? Would love to have your explanation and view on the monthly active subscribers in detail.
Yes. So I think I need to break your question down into 2 parts, right? So the monthly active subscribers is one thing, which is, it's the ultimate metric, right? Yeah. And in essence, it's the first part is you asked it slightly differently to begin with, right? Which is, what metrics should you be using? So there's a lot of talk about, let's start with open rates because that's the easiest one. There's a lot of talk about, open rates just don't work. They're not valid. Do you get what I mean? MPP, bots, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Now, I could give you an answer based in physics, right? Okay. Which is, the voltage doesn't matter, it's the differential. Does that make sense? So if you don't, but you can measure the differential.
Yep.
Right? So it's the same thing. With MPP and all of these things, the error is constant. So I ignore it. Okay? It doesn't change from day to day. And here's how I know it's still valuable. Because deliverability companies haven't stopped using opens because they've got nothing else. Opens and clicks, right? So I know. These things make me laugh too. So they're still using opens while saying it's a failed metric, okay? They're still saying that. And what they know and I know, it's because and they were easily able, it took them a few weeks to calibrate the difference, okay? So what used to be 15% with bots, right? Or 15% minus bots is now 45% with MPP opens and bots and something else. And they just recalibrated. It's as simple as that. So in a sense, that doesn't really matter. One of the things I like about MPP and all of that sort of stuff, here's what it tells you, is you got delivered, right? So I'll take 40% all day long, even if I couldn't even understand what that meant. Okay, it means I got delivered. I'll take 60% even better. I'll take 90% even better, right? And even if you said it was all MPP, I would be happy because it means 90% of my list got delivered. And you see, people don't really think wider than the problem, okay? So I don't have a problem with opens, and neither do the deliverability companies. That's the irony, okay? What I have a problem is anything that has the word rate, okay? Open rate is ridiculous. Open rate of what? Your best customers, every customer, is that an average of your best or average of everybody or average of this or average of that? Okay, I've seen companies make decisions based on open rate. So they used to send an email out and then send a resend 2 days later. It was very effective, okay? So the email went out, say, 6% click rate. The resend got 1.5% click rate. Corporate set a thing that said any engagement under 3% would stop sending that email. They couldn't see that every one of those clicks was incremental. Every one of them. They couldn't see that. So sometimes people say to me, if you had a wish, what would your wish be for email marketers? I would say they would learn how to count, right? Because there's a difference between a rate. So anyone who understands, there's a golfing expression. Driving is for the show, putting is for the dough, okay? Which means, yeah, looking great on the driving range isn't how you win money, right? You win money on the putting, okay? And I say this about email, I paraphrase it, and I say rates are for the show, right? Numbers are for the dough. That's basically what it is. So the first thing you start doing is counting, right? And you start saying, I got this number of clicks and this number of sales, not my rates increased by X or Y or Z, okay? Because then you start gaming the system that gets you less money, because higher rates means less money, almost always. Almost always. So when you've got less money, you don't go in front of your CEO and say, we made less money. You go in front of your CEO and said, we improved our conversion rate by 32%. So we're on the right direction. That's what you do, okay? So almost everything, and I include in this revenue per email, right? Because revenue per email is the same as open rate. It's a rate, okay? It's a rate. I would rather revenue per subscriber, okay? That's much more powerful, but even then, I would much more prefer, this is how much incremental revenue this email generates it. So the first thing you do is start counting. Now, when you start counting, the second thing that happens to you is you begin to understand attribution, okay? Because now you're counting from the number of emails sent, not your open rate or your click rate. You're starting from impressions sent. And what you'll find is exactly what people in TV and press and everybody else finds. If you create more impressions, you get more results, all things being equal at the other end. Okay? So then you have to start looking where else these impressions are making a difference. Because with TV, you don't base a TV ad on how many people just called you and bought with their credit card immediately. You don't. You look at the footfall in stores increasing over time. You look at all of those sorts of things. So I start looking elsewhere. So my definition of engagement, you spoke about it, I let it pass because it was too early to go into it, isn't just whether they opened or clicked on the email. Is were they active in any channel, and can I attribute that to email? Why is that important? Google does it. Think about it. An email comes into your inbox, in my inbox. It's the same brand. I haven't opened it for 6 months. Right? Okay? Google knows I actually subscribed because they remember my email confirmation, right? They know that. They also know that I visit their the website and click on paid search to go for products to that website more often when they're in my inbox than if they're not in my inbox, right?
Yep.
They use location on the phone to say, oh, this guy visited Target 7 times in the last 3 months. They know that, funnily enough, when there's a good offer in the email, that guy's more likely to take a side trip and go to Target on the way home than he would if that wasn't in the inbox, right? Why do you think Google wouldn't use that? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? So the irony is, Google are treating your customers the way you should be treating them, and you're sitting down and saying, oh, no, I'm not going to mail them because they didn't open. Google doesn't care because they know. And when Google sets out their definition, here's the funny thing. What does Google, people say, oh, when should you stop emailing people, or you shouldn't mail people who haven't opened for a long time? Do you know what Google's definition is? Or ABC's definition is for when they completely regard a customer, a Google account to be inactive. Do you know what it is? It's 2 years of nothing. What does not happen? You never searched. You never used Google Maps, right? You never used an Android phone, ever, right? For 2 whole years. You never used your Gmail account for 2 whole years. So the question I would ask you when say, how long can I keep mailing someone? I would say this. If you think the last thing someone did on Google was open your email, you're an idiot. So I would argue that if Google give 2 years, you could probably give 3, 4, or 5, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say, look, 2 years is 100% safe. 100% safe. Google have told us. And the other thing Google have done is Google have done nothing new. All they've done is enforced what has been best practice for about 5 years. And everyone's saying Google's going to do it, Google's going to do it, Google's going to do it. Google did it, and now they're saying it's new. No. This is 5-year-old years. So monthly active subscribers is how Google looks at your subscriber and your subscriber base. Okay? So if you send to 1 million people or 100,000 or 10,000 with a Gmail address, what do you think the chances are Google doesn't know what percentage of your list engaged with your brand somewhere in its ecosystem in the last month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months? And if they know that, the only reason to suppress an email or put it in spam would be illegal, because what they're doing is they're preventing a customer or you, the brand, from using the cheapest way of reaching people by actually hiding your messages from them in an intentionally malicious way. That can't happen. So monthly active subscribers isn't just my dream. Do you get what I mean? Monthly active subscribers is basically what you do when you take each customer as an individual human being and compare their interactions with you in every single customer's and base it around the only true UID that you have, which is their email address. That's the funny thing about it. It's the most persistent UID, okay? It's the one that everybody uses. If you have an iPhone, you have an Apple address, whether you want one or not. If you have a Samsung phone, you've got a Samsung address, whether you want it or not, right? And so It's really hard to be a consumer or interact in any way without these guys knowing everything, right? And if they did know everything, why would they not use it? And all I'm trying to show you is if you think of monthly active subscribers, what percentage of my list, right, engage with me anywhere this month or this year or this quarter? And then compare a month when you sent 1 million emails to a month when you sent 2 million emails. Or a day when you sent to everyone, or a day when you sent to your best customers. Go and look what happens to monthly active subscribers. Does that make sense? I'm trying to, it's actually, I've written about it quite a lot in my newsletter. So if anyone wants to dig deeper, it's there. I also, by the way, and this is everybody who listens to this, if I offer a free conversation, if anyone has more conversations, I just allocate some spare time. And anybody who books it, they've got me for 45 minutes. So, and on any topic, it doesn't really matter. But the reason I'm saying is monthly active subscribers is really simple but really complicated, right? Its simplicity is tie everything that everyone does to whether you send them an email or not.
Yep. It's all about making sure that you have your monthly active subscribers active, right? And then focus on it because that's your area to improve.
Yes. Let's put it this way. When email volume increases or email active increases, you will see increases in every other channel. Okay? Yeah. And one of the things I say as a test is on one day, send everybody you can an email, the same email. It doesn't actually matter what it is, because send them the same email or different emails. I don't care, right? But send everyone one email on one day. Then the next day or a week later on the same day, just send your best subscribers your best emails, right? See what happens to monthly active subscribers and revenue.
Yep, that is good. Definitely going to make an impact.
Huge. That's what I mean. I can count.
So your active subscribers and it is definitely directly proportional with your impact in terms of the revenue, impact in terms of their website.
It's the closest. Sorry, it's actually the closest thing I have ever seen. It's more closely correlated to revenue than anything else.
Yep.
Right. If you went daily, you'll see the same thing, right? If you go daily, you'll see exactly the same thing, and you'll see that the daily active subscribers is more correlated to daily revenue than anything else, and it's true for monthly, quarterly, and annual.
Got it. Yep. Now, moving a little forward, right, to the advanced tactics, right, because we set up that base of how many emails needs to be sent, right? Also identify correctly. Once set up the email, let's say 1 per week, right? Just to start with, you focus on doing those automations, right? These triggered automations, right? Then we also talk about the monthly active subscribers, right? Which the brand should focus on. Now, if we move towards a little advanced version of it, which is more towards growth, loyalty, and data, right? Everyone talks about personalization, right? But it's not at scale, right? And if you don't do it, it becomes incredibly complex, right? Many marketers either oversimplify or give up your build tools like Touchstone to handle massive personalization. Would love to understand if you can share most effective process you're used to successfully personalize email at scale without overwhelming the team.
I kind of described it. Okay.
Yep.
The personalization is on the behavior when you know something. Okay. That's the point about automations and triggers. They're based on behavior. Almost everybody spends all their time downstream taking what comes as an act of God. Oh, nothing came today. Oh, God was, yeah. Oh, the omens weren't right. Oh, a lot of fish. Oh my God, I'm really good at my job. No fish at all. Oh my God, the omens weren't right. Do you see what I mean? No one's sitting there and saying, who is filling the fish farm at the top, right?
Yeah.
No one's asking that question. And almost all personalization and automation tools are based on that premise, right? That it's an act of God or someone else's technology, preferably paid, that will drive these people in, and you'll just sit there and wait for them and say you're clever, right? That's my problem. Okay, so personalization per se is good. And all personalization in every circumstance is good. And that is not the case, right? I've already told you, you can't test if everything is personalized because you never have a baseline, right? And if you do that, the only way to do it is have a complete exclusion list or whatever it is that never get an email, holdout list. And A, nobody does that. And B, you still don't learn anything because it's nothing or highly specialized or nothing or not so specialized or not so personalized. So it's really hard to tell. What I tried to describe to you is I like personalization based on user behavior, which is what the automations do. Every automation is not only personalizable to the individual accurately, it's also personalizable to the behavior accurately and specifically, okay? And you're not guessing. So this is the problem with personalization, in my view, and I learned this a very, very long time ago. I would be very surprised it's not true still. When it was easy to make money by linking to Amazon, by writing a review and putting a link and collecting affiliate money with Amazon back in the day, right? I'm talking very, very early days. I'm talking about 2003, 2004, 2005, okay? Someone who would be making a lot of money out of that said, oh, if you ever go into this, here's a quick tip. Never deep link. You make less money than if you send them to the homepage.
Yep.
I believe that's still true today, okay? Because you can never know when I'm going to buy something that I shouldn't be buying. You cannot know that my wife just gave birth. Or if you do, right, your Alexa or Siri, right, or Samsung or someone like that, right? But most of us don't know that stuff. So you have to have something that is a surprise or you couldn't know, that's an experiment or whatever it is. And that's what I say the email to everybody is, okay? That allows you to generate behavior that you couldn't have expected, right? It also allows you, and here's another thing I was told a long time ago, right, by one of my biggest clients there, I once said to them when personalization first came up, by the way, I've given all this advice before, but I used to give it 20 years ago until I learned, okay? I went to the client and said, oh, we can personalize. So listen, for example, diets. We can send a personalized thing about diets. And do you know what they said to me? They said, we would never target anybody with a diet ad or indeed anything else in case we became legally responsible for either what happened to them, does that make sense, or are implied to be disrespecting what they are or whatever it is, okay? They even said they would not do diets, men, women, even though they know that there's 90% more clients of women who use diet products than men products, right? They would just never do it. That's another example. The final example, and this is one of my favorite ones, because the person who came to me with this just emailed me randomly after about 5 years of not talking to him. I've known him for a very long time, okay? He was one of the early founders and exited from one of the big ESPs. It was a 3 to 5 billion sale listing some years back, right? He then set up his own business, which was in another space, okay? And then finally he's ended up doing what his true love is, and he's got an organic farm somewhere in the US, okay? And he's growing vegetables and organic stuff. It's the labor of his love and everything else. And he sent me an email and he said, Dela, I just want you to know this. When you first told me your theories, I knew they were right and I implemented it, but I allowed time to forget, right? And I just set up this farm. And for the first year or so, I was wasting my time segmenting and targeting. People who bought potatoes will need this next. Someone who did this is a vegan and so doesn't want meat. All of this sort of stuff. And he said, and then your words came into my ears and my head. And I just now send the same email to everybody on my list 4 times a week with what I have. He said, my results have never been better. I will never do anything different. There's no need. So, my point is, personalize all you like, right? But don't think that failure to personalize is either a mortal sin or that you're losing money or indeed wrong. in actual fact, I would ask you to focus on how much more money will personalization make than non-personalization. And do you know how you can easily prove it? The weekly email you send to everybody that's unpersonalized, that's your baseline.
Yep, that's the base back. It's all about making sure that if you personalize, right, and there's no concern about people with control, right? If you are not doing personalization, it's fine, right? It's not about being afraid that, okay, you are not following the best practices, you are not following the way market is moving. It's always about that you try to reach out to all, try to compare and see what those numbers are. If you are able to make an impact, you don't need to personalize.
More importantly, every automation is totally personalized.
Yep, that's one.
So why are you trying to personalize the one that goes out to everybody, right, when you wouldn't do it on TV? Yes, and I'm going to go back to TV. America is one of the few countries where you can just advertise drugs on TV, medications on TV, right? Do you get what I mean? Or the UK you can as well, but there are things like arthritis and all of this sort of thing, okay? Now, imagine, next time I've been seeing these commercials for 10 years, okay? I've seen these brands. It's the same brands. Do you get what I mean? But some more than others. Which brand do you think I'm likely to go for if I suddenly got a twinge in my knee? Or what would I say to my mother if she said to me, oh, I'm feeling pains in my joints. What should I do, right? I'm just going to immediately, if not Google, and I'll find somebody's ad. Do you get what I mean? I'm going to remember the things from TV, and that's my start. And that's why you need... So the point isn't, it's not binary. That's my point. And in fact, personalization without a benchmark is worthless.
Personalization should always be about having those benchmarks and numbers which you can aim for or chase for.
And learn from.
Run from, yep, definitely. Now, I would also love to understand that there are brands, right, who often mistakenly cut subscribers. We talked about that again. They should not remove the disengaged or unengaged subscribers, right, because they don't send emails to unengaged audience. But there are brands who often mistakenly remove or cut subscribers, assuming that they are inactive, right, hurting potential long-term revenue. A practice they repeatedly, or I believe you are repeatedly challenging that practice, right, which brands are normally following. What's your most effective tactic for re-engaging subscribers labeled as inactive, right? And the definition varies from expert to expert. Someone says 90 days inactive, 180 days inactive, website visits inactive, email open inactive, right? Now that terminology varies from person to person, but what is your most effective way to, or tactics to re-engage subscribers which are labeled as inactive?
There are a couple of ways to answer the question. First of all, my thing would be that should never happen, right? And certainly not for 2 years, okay? And in fact, I told you about Gmail announcing the 2-year limit and what that means. Before that, I think in 2016 or 2017, I wrote an article called Deliverability, Engagement, and the Theory of Email Marketing. And it was based on a conference I went to where for the first time, Gmail and Yahoo executives were sitting at the table. And I stood up and I asked a question. I said, what would you say to people who stop mailing people after... And this, I can name the guy. I'll have to look his name up. I wrote an article about it, etc., etc. What would you say to people who stop mailing their subscribers because they didn't open after 60, 90, 120 days? Take your pick, right? He said, anyone who stops mailing their subscribers in less than 2 years is leaving money on the table. That's what they said. That's the Gmail postmaster or someone very senior at Gmail at a conference responding to a direct question from me 2 years ago. They have now doubled down on that by actually announcing that 2 years is their limit. He was signaling then, right, that it was safe to mail people who don't open for 2 years. The industry didn't want to hear it. I was fortunate enough to be in the room. I heard it. It's probably until very recently one of the most read articles that I've ever written. That kind of answers the question. You don't stop mailing them, but if you did mail, if you had stopped mailing them, what do you do? Okay, the first thing is hashtag do be smart, right? Don't just pick up all of them and mail them tomorrow, okay? Secondly, don't waste your time with Did you miss me? Did you not? Oh, we missed you. Please confirm. Double up. Don't waste your time in that. Basically, slowly reintroduce them into your everyone gets this email once a week. That's what you do. And at the same time, you begin to slowly push out your window, right? Because you put in a list at 90 days. So for the first month, you push it out to 120 days. Do you get what I mean? Now, the problem with that is if you push it out, then immediately anyone who hasn't received for 120 days, but at least that's not a bad list. Does that make sense? But you want to do it slowly and take advice from the deliverability expert. Don't say, should I do this? Say, I am going to do this. What's the safest way? There's a difference in the response you'll get because one allows them to go to bed without earn their money without doing any work, and the other one requires them to work and tell you how to do it. So if I were them, I would say, don't do it because I can go to bed knowing that I can earn my money without doing anything. Make them answer the question. And then what they'll probably tell you is, listen, if there's some really old ones, 2, 3, 5 years old, do a cut-off point, 2 years, 5 years. I would say 2 years, yeah? 2 years and above, cut that off, put them to one side. Okay, anyone under 2 years, just introduce them slowly. In the same way as if you were warming up your IP or something along those lines, take the same kind of precautions that you would if you were warming your IP. And it shouldn't take you more than a month.
It's about the correct number or the advice from you is 2 years, right? Someone who's already within that 2 years limit, right? Make sure that you still send them emails, right?
Yes, but don't start at the back end of the list. Do you see what I mean? Find a way of mixing it up a bit. Do you see what I mean? So some a bit old, some a bit this, and just take some advice and do it that way, right? And I'm going to say this. Even with some of the older names, right? You've got to understand who your brand is and how you got the name, okay? So let's say, for the sake of argument, you are a trusted nationwide brand. I'll give you an example, Target, right? If you are Target, and I got on your list 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and I haven't opened an email for a year or two, does that make sense? The chances are I'm a safe person to mail. Do you know why? Because the chances are my email address is associated with my credit card. And almost nobody regularly changes the email address associated with their credit card.
Yep, that's a fair point.
I've had to do it once in 25 years, and it's a pain. I never want to do it again, right? So, and that's one of my catchphrases. People say, oh, but everyone has lots of email addresses, right? Oh, how do you know? Et cetera, et cetera. They can have the horrible one. And I say, so first of all, if someone gives you their horrible email address like Mickey Mouse or spam, you deserve it. Your brand deserves it. That's the first thing, okay? And the second thing I say is, don't ask yourself how many email addresses someone has. Just make sure the one you have is associated with a credit card. Simple.
That's a fair one to be on top of their inbox, at least being aware that which one they are regularly checking, because someone who is having that email address connected with the credit card, there are high possibilities that they would be checking it on a regular basis.
No, the email address won't change.
Yeah, and it
won't become a spam trap. It won't become a spam trap, and you will not get bounced. You know what I'm saying?
It won't get bounced. It will be delivered, right? And that there are high chances that it won't be changing, right?
Oh, Chintan, I just had a really good idea. See, this is what happens when I'm thinking out aloud. So this is fresh and a new idea, okay? You remember I said at least with MPP, I know you were delivered? Right, one of the interesting things, cross-refer MPP against how long someone has been on the list.
Oh, yeah. That way, that's a nice way to track it.
Yes, so if someone's like on your list 5 years and they're showing an open or MPP, don't disregard it.
Valid point. No, that's a totally valid point, right? It gives a signal to the email marketers, right, which they definitely should be aware of.
Yeah.
Great. That brings me to the last question of this session, right? And it's about privacy, right? There are privacy rules changing every now and then, right? Different data regulations are there right across the marketers, and marketers are worried about maintaining effective personalization, and your position email as the best channel against all the other channels for compliance data collection. So with privacy rules changing, how can email help brands build a strong first-party data?
My first thought is they have already. It's the strongest first-party data they have by millions or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, right? They have more first-party data, right? They're just not using it. So Gmail is using their first-party data, and it's the same as yours. They're using it effectively and you're not. So the answer is email is actually the best channel for generating and utilizing and communicating with people from a first or zero party perspective, right? It's as simple as that. That's the first thing. The second thing is really interesting. I was involved in the DMA, UK DMA, when we were being consulted about GDPR and all of this sort of stuff, and email, the DMA's email committee was involved. I was involved in it. And one of the first things I said is, why are we in this meeting? There's nothing in GDPR that email wasn't already compliant with. Nothing, right? And it was like, oh, no, we need to be seen to be participants. I said, okay, let's participate in the talk and just agree with everyone being held to the same rules as us, okay? Now, here's an interesting thing. They're not. And if they are held to the same rules, they behave differently to us. You go to any website in Europe and see what happens when you visit the site, that pop-up that says, agree or not, legitimate, agree or not, privacy, okay? Almost all of them regularly make it almost no, that's not fair. 40% make it impossible to remove legitimate interest without going down and unclicking about 20 buttons, right? That's the first thing.
Yep.
About 15 or 10, 20% allow you to reject all in one go, which is great. Others are really, really good. And every one of them, okay, makes the accept so much more compelling and clear, right? No, compelling and designed to make you think you're agreeing to read the content, not giving permission, right? Every day online. Think about how your data is used, abused, who knows what they do on search and social media or not. Look how they could just change the algorithm and completely destroy your business in one go. Stop you reaching your own customer, right? And then sit down and say, can we have a conversation about email and first-party data or zero-party data? It's the only one. I wrote an article called Why Email is the Only Tariff-Free Channel. Because everything else is paid. The only thing, nobody can stop me getting through the paywall with my own message once I have that email address and permission. They can't.
Yep. That's totally true. Yeah. It's about people are sharing their email address and it's accessible for us.
And they gave it to you. So going back to the thing about when should you stop mailing them. So someone comes to you and says, I'd like to get your email, or I don't want to not get your email. It depends on how you phrase it. Every email they get was got a big unsubscribe button. Everybody gets spam, is told, oh my God, you're spammed all the time. Don't, if it's a spam, hit the spam button. Gmail can spam, right? Everybody's told this. Name a consumer. If you go to a dinner party and you say you're involved in email, what's the first thing they do? They say, oh, you're a spammer, right? Everybody is totally tuned to spam, okay? And yet they still sign up to your email address. Why would they do that? Because they want to get it, right? Now, imagine an ordinary human being. How many, and if I go back, I'll go back 15, 20 years. When I first started speaking at conferences, right? If I said, hands up who sends email once a month, 50% of the room. Once a week, 40% of the room. More than once a week, 10% of the room. Every day, nobody. The daily category had not been invented, right? Nobody sent daily emails. So if you were a subscriber, you wouldn't expect a daily email. But when someone put a daily email out, guess what? It suddenly became one of the most valuable companies in the world, digital companies in the world, because they suddenly found out that human beings actually will sign up for this shit and they'll take 5 emails a day. The evidence is in front of our eyes and we just ignore it, okay? So, again, going back to it, you're sitting down and all of these channels make it... So I signed up. I know I'm going to get at least 2-3 emails a week. I'd be an idiot if I didn't, okay? I would be stupid if I didn't, okay? And I start getting 2-3 emails a week, and I know there's an unsubscribe button, and I know that Gmail has at the top spam. They've got all of these buttons there, and I just didn't use it. And you, the marketer, are going to sit down and go, oh, that's because he's so stupid, and he hates me so much, right? This is what he's doing. This guy hates me so much that he stays on my list so I can keep annoying him so he can hate me even more. And I need to stop that. That's just, please, that doesn't happen. So the people go on their list, they're not stupid. They signed up for getting email. They will call it spam at a dinner party because that's what all human beings do. Do you see what I mean? They will never unsubscribe. And if you send them 3 emails a week, they will buy from you more often and spend more than if you don't send them an email at all or if you send them one email a month. Simple.
Totally agree on that. So people, that would be calling it spam, but then if they have to live, they would have already left, right, your list. Yeah? They have all the options in the world.
Everything. And they have options that no other channel has.
Yeah.
Imagine if there was an unsubscribe button on TV ads. Imagine that.
The email is the only channel where they have an option.
And it's the only channel that acts as if they don't.
Yeah. Gives them that freedom to remove themselves from the list.
Make my day. I love unsubscribes. Make my day. Unsubscribes, clean your list. And do you know something? If you suddenly went from 1 email a week to 2 emails a week, you will get an immediate increase in unsubscribes, but it will tail off. Okay? I call those unsubscribes gold dust because what they're telling you is those are the people on the margin of do I want you or not, right? 1 a week, okay, I don't mind. 2 a week, not so much. They unsubscribe. Do you get what I mean? So, and it will go down, and then you'll be back at equilibrium. And in 4 weeks' time, your unsubscribe rate will be the same as it was when
it was a year.
Because you've cleaned your list.
So unsubscribe is a way of cleaning your list, right? That's it.
It's the only way of giving true choice to your subscribers and respecting their intelligence.
Fair point. Oh, definitely a good point from that. And people nowadays, marketers nowadays are not thinking from that perspective, right? They're always afraid of unsubscribe. That okay, they are churning their list. They need to focus on acquiring new subscribers because the audience or the list is getting churned. They are always worried about that people are leaving that list. But yeah, the way you are thinking it, that it's a good way, right, to think that they were not interested. If you just increase the frequency of your email, let them go, right?
Yeah.
And
so, yes. And I'd like to add to this. If I sound really fluent and boom, 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 it's because I've been saying the same thing for 20 years. I'm very good at it because I know every single argument. I know where the argument's coming from, where it's going to, okay? So, you might go, well, you must be wrong because no one's taking up. No. No, not at all. Email marketing is one of the number 1 introductions to digital that exists, right? There is almost nobody except the people who end up being email marketers who stay in email for their whole career, okay? Everybody else uses it, boom, I want to be out. I want to be in search. I want to be here. Oh, shiny new tools, AI, I want to be out, right? So I'm telling people who have not heard this before over and over and over again, right? It's because the industry shifts. Email marketing rarely has anyone very senior in charge of it long term. If they do, they're the only person running the organization and they've been in the company for 10 years. Most email marketing departments churn all the time. New CMO comes in, oh, I know better ESP, I know better this, change everything. Oh, we don't do this, we don't do that. Everything changes, right? Then now everyone's learning a new ESP and everything else. So the point is, everyone in email is both running too fast to sit down and absorb the reality, number 1. And number 2, they don't stay there long enough for those lessons to filter in. And that's why I have to keep saying the same thing over and over again. As I say, the good thing is it makes me a very good presenter of my case. whether you agree with it or not.
But your point of view and the way you share it, that definitely is valuable to everyone in the market, right? Whoever is leveraging email marketing as a channel, they should definitely learn and adapt into their marketing process. But yeah, if they are into an agency or maybe they are managing the marketing for a brand, they should definitely try to grab those information. So thanks, Dela, for having a great session. It was really great to know a different perspective, right? Against the best practices, because people tend to follow the best practices. But then it's great to see that you being the person who is there from in the industry from last 2 decades, right, is still having a different view, right, which is against the best practices. But then the rationale you have is more important, right? They are value addition, right, to the marketers, to make sure that they think out of the box, not just the traditional way of thinking on the marketing side. But yeah, we have enjoyed this session, and I'm sure whoever is listening to this session, they would be enjoying to see that again. Make sure that you don't follow the best practice of starting with the triggered automation, right? Start with a campaign, right, and then move towards the triggered automation. Don't think that you should start segmenting from day one. It's always about sending to everyone, right? At least once per week, right? Make sure that you reach them out, right? Rather than just restricting your funnel, right? Which was a great example. And the most important part which you covered and was my favorite was monthly active subscribers. That's again a total different view of looking into the performance metrics. People are now bored or not able to rely on the open rates, right? As we talked about MPP, which you termed it as a good metric for you to check the delivery, right? Which is again a good insight. But yeah, it's more about how you see the metrics with a different lens, right? Which is your monthly active subscribers. So thanks for sharing a great suggestions, advice, insights on the email marketing side. We really loved and enjoyed, and I'm sure the email marketers will be able to get the more learnings watching this session.
Thank you so much. Very, very kind. I enjoyed it, and I can encourage anybody who wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn to do so. I'm always happy to answer questions.
Yep, perfect.